Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just had some high praise from a former teammate of his, talking about how he knew SGA was going to be a star when he first started playing with him. Also, Skip Bayless giving some high praise to Oklahoma City and talking about how deep their bench is. What up? I'm Bryson Akins here with Thunder Digest. Before we get into this video, I just want to mention this real quick. 90% of you guys watching these videos are not subscribed to the channel. That's 90% of you guys coming back and watching these videos, by the way. If you're coming back, you love the content and everything, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to stay up to date on your Oklahoma City Thunder news and support the channel. Once again, don't have to, but if you keep on coming back, it means the world if you hit that subscribe button. And let's try to bounce those numbers out to 50-50, why don't we? Now, we'll go ahead and get into this video. Got some good stuff to talk about before the playoff game tomorrow against the Pelicans, where we can take a commanding 3-0 lead, by the way, which would be huge for this team and huge for momentum and huge for morale. But we're going to talk about SGA first, as recently Darius Bayley went out and talked about Shai's progression and how he knew he was going to be a star in this league when he first started playing with him in Oklahoma City. Now, once again, Darius Bayley, my bad, was a former project for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who we thought may have turned out, but we decided to part ways with him in 2023. But recently, he went out and talked about how he knew Shai was going to be a star in a recent podcast. And in this article, it kind of sums up everything that he was saying about Shai. This is what he said. My rookie year, his second year, it was like you have Chris Paul, you got Dennis Schroeder, which you could argue that was one of his best years in the NBA. You got all these different guys. Nobody was expecting us to win. We started figuring it out, but Shai was a big part to it. When I had conversations with him, you could tell he wanted more. There's some guys I've been around coming in their second year, third year, thinking, I just have to play good. Shai was beyond, I just got to play well so I can get a second contract. He was on some, like, I want the ball more. The next year when he came back, you could just tell he kept adding to his game. And that's kind of, when you think about it, I'm going to bring up his progression of his stats from year 1 to year 6 now, I believe. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But when you look at the progression of how he's played, especially last year and this year, you can tell there's always been something he's improving on to his game. The first time he was coming into the league, he was working on his floater, trying to get his floater down, his layup package figured out. And then the next few years, he worked on defense a little bit more. And then he worked on his mid-range shot. And then this season, you can tell he's been working on a three-point shot. And that's kind of been talked about in the last part of the article here as well. My rookie year, his second year, his floater game was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen him miss a floater. Then the year after that, that's when he added the mid-range. But not to the point that he's at now. The year after that, it was more polished. He had turnaround, and his three-ball started getting better. Over time, you just knew he was tough. Everything Bazley said was truthful, as Gilgeous-Alexander has added something new every year, whether it be mid-range, defense, or three-point shooting. The sky's the limit for what he does throughout his career. And so, like I mentioned there, you can kind of tell throughout the progression of his career, every single season, he's improved on some aspect of his game, mainly offensively, because he's one of the toughest offensive weapons and offensive guards in the league right now. He can score from will at any spot on the court. But when you look at his progression, you can kind of tell right here that every part of his game just kept on improving, especially when he came from the Clippers his rookie year to Oklahoma City in his second year here. You can tell the points. 10.8, almost 11 there if you want to round up, to 19. That's a 8-point jump right there in just a season, just because of his situation where he is at now. You can tell he improved tremendously there. And the shooting numbers, although they didn't quite improve, it was because he was being able to shoot the ball more. He was relied on to make more shots in Oklahoma City. He was the offensive weapon at the time. That's when you could kind of tell Oklahoma City had a plan for him to be the number one offensive choice for this team. Then progressively, as he moved on more here, 23.7 points per game in only a 35-game season for him in 2020-2021. That's great improvement for him. Also, shooting numbers a little bit better. 50% for regular field goal percentage and 41% from behind the arc. One of his best shooting years from behind the three-point line. Then 2021, 2022, 24.5. Then he really had to step up in the 2022 season, the 2023 season, where he averaged 31 points per game. Sorry, I was choking on myself a little bit there. 31 points per game right there in a season is when you can kind of tell, all right, he's finally coming to himself, and he finally figured out all these offensive weapons that he has. And then 2023, 2024, he did the same exact thing, except he's a little bit more efficient now at every aspect of the game. And defensively, he's playing phenomenally right now. He is the reason the Thunder are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now. He is an MVP candidate who has my vote for MVP. Now, it's a little biased. I'm going to be honest. It's a little biased coming from a Thunder fan here saying he should be MVP because you had 2 other guys that have also had great season in Luka and Jokic. But he is an MVP candidate. He is one of the best players in the league and one of the best players in the world at the moment. And it's because he's just kept on progressing because he has a mindset. There's something I can be better at every single time I'm out on the court. But it's not just him as well. The entirety of the Oklahoma City team is great. They are. You have guys like Chet Holmgren in the starting lineup, Dort, who's one of the best defensive players in the league, Josh Giddey, whose court awareness is unmatched, and then Jalen Williams, J-Dub, not J-Will, J-Dub, who is one of the most athletic and exciting players to watch right now. Then you also have the bench, which I'm going to talk about here. When Skip Bayless was hyping up the OKC bench on Undisputed yesterday, when you're watching this, it might be Saturday when you're watching this, so he's talking about it on Thursday. That's not the point, though. He went out there, and not only did he hype up the bench, he hyped up the entire team, saying that they could win the Western Conference. But the bench was the main thing he was looking at, talking about how this is the deepest team in the playoffs. How some other teams are only going 7-man deep right now, whereas the Thunder, we're going 11 guys deep every single game in the playoffs at the moment. And it's insane. No team really ever does that when it comes to the playoffs. Sure, regular season, you go 10, 11 guys deep to keep your players healthy, keep them energized. You don't want your star player getting injured. But when it comes to playoff time, it's usually 7 to 8 man rotation, 7 to 8 guys deep. But the Thunder, we're going insane. And Skip Bayless also said that about it, talking about how the Thunder bench is elite when you look at it. He said J. Will is one of the best defensive players in the league. Defensive mindset, he said it's unrivaled. And I got to agree with him. It's nice to see J. Will getting that recognition because even though he doesn't get a lot of blocks per game, a lot of steals, it's the fact that he's willing to take charges down low and force turnovers and fouls on the other team, which helps out the Thunder so much when he's coming into the game. Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, offensive weapons coming off the bench for us. Gordon Hayward, veteran leadership. Cason Wallace, another defensive threat out there on the perimeter. And so we basically roll in another set of our guys going in that game with Isaiah Joe, Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, Gordon Hayward, and J. Will right there because they kind of match what all of our players kind of do on the court. And when you look at the stats, it also shows as here are the regular season stats right here. I know it's showing 7 guys right there. Just don't really, don't pay much attention to Ousmane Dieng there, but we're going to pay attention to all these other guys. When you look at it, Isaiah Joe, 8.2 points off their bench. Aaron Wiggins, 6.9. Cason Wallace, 6.8. Hayward, 5.3. Kenrick, 4.7. Then J. Will, 4 points per game. They're putting in solid numbers off the bench right there. That's over 20 points. It's close to 30. I'm not great at math. I'm not going to do it right now, but it probably is over 30. Then all the other stats are looking nice as well. Rebounds, J. Will with 3 right there. Isaiah Joe, 2. All the other stats. Turnovers are low as well. None of them are above 1 in the turnover factor at the very end there. And so as you can see, the bench is solid. The bench is great. We are deep. But you also got to think about where they do in the playoffs. Now, the other night, they didn't do much. The starters were on, and so we didn't really have to rely on the bench. But that first game, we definitely did. Aaron Wiggins had a few nice plays. Isaiah Joe stepped up. Cason Wallace defensively stepped up. J. Will had some 2 big-time threes for us, and it showed. It showed as here are their stats through 2 games in the playoffs right now. Isaiah Joe, 6.5 points per game. Wiggins, 6. Cason Wallace, 3.5. J. Will, 3. Kenrick, 1, and Gordon Hayward has yet to get a playoff bucket yet, but it's his mindset, it's his veteran leadership out there, it's his presence that he commands when he's on the court that is helping out this team so much at the moment, even though he's not getting a ton of time, 9.5 minutes per game at the moment, along with Kenrick, 6. It's our top 4 guys right now that are also young that we're relying on the bench right now, especially Isaiah Joe, Cason Wallace, and Jalen Williams, I feel like, are the 3 guys that we're relying on the most. Isaiah Joe offensively, He's our best offensive player, I believe. Then Cason Wallace and Jay Will, they're our two best defensive players when they're out there. And they help out so much when they're in, especially against a team like New Orleans that we're playing right now, where they also have a ton of offensive weapons, and we need them to step up. Example being Cason Wallace locking down CJ McCollum on the final shot of the game, Game 1, to help the Thunder come away with the victory, 94-92. That was big time from our bench right there. That was huge. That shows how deep we are and how good we are off the bench, that we don't have to kind of be stressed and worried when our bench does come into the game. And Skip Bayless pointed that out while he was talking about the Thunder, talking about how they have a legit shot to go all the way to the NBA Finals. Now, he didn't say we could win it all, but he did say we can win the Western Conference just because how deep our bench is and how much we can rely on them compared to some other teams. When you look at the Mavs, the Nuggets, the Clippers, when you look at those teams, they're not able to rely on their bench as much. Even Minnesota, now they did have Naz Reid, who's 6th man of the year, but even then after that, it's a huge drop-off for the Timberwolves. Compared to us, and it's not a huge drop-off. We got great guys off the bench, some guys I would even start at some other places, and Skip Bayless talked about how that is the reason we will make the NBA Finals and win the Western Conference. Along with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, of course, being the MVP candidate that he is and being that good of a player. But the bench helps out so much, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But that's all I got for today's Thunder Digest video. Once again, like I mentioned, if you're sticking around the whole time for these videos and you're coming back, wouldn't hurt to hit the subscribe button. You don't have to, but we're trying to reach 250 now by the end of the month. We passed 200 before the end of the week, which was huge. You guys did great with that. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all for that. But now it's time to try to hit 250 by the end of the month, which don't got a lot of days left. But with how much you guys have been doing it, I think we can hit that. And so, once again, if you stayed the whole time, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.